Mountain Man saved the Apache woman from Snakebite, but her sisters said he must prove his worth. Eli had lived most of his life in the mountains. He was a man of the land, someone who knew the trails, the rivers, and the hidden caves better than anyone else. People in nearby towns and villages often spoke of him as the Mountain Man, a man who seemed to belong to the wilderness as much as the trees and rocks. He did not live in a house or a town. He had built a small cabin near a stream where he hunted, fished, and gathered herbs. Every morning he would wake with the sun, listen to the wind moving through the pines, and plan his day according to the rhythm of nature. He had learned many things from living alone. He knew which plants could be eaten, which herbs could heal, and how to make traps for small animals. He could start a fire with dry sticks, even when the wind was strong. And he could find his way even when the trails disappeared under snow or fog. Eli was careful, patient, and calm. Yet he was also a man who understood danger. He had faced bears, mountain lions, and the occasional thunderstorm that seemed to split the sky. He respected the mountains, and in return, they seemed to trust him. One bright morning, Eli was walking along a narrow trail, checking the tracks of a deer he had spotted the day before. The mountains were quiet except for the rustling of leaves and the occasional bird song. Suddenly he heard a sharp cry that made him freeze. It was not the cry of an animal. It was human and full of pain. Eli's heart quickened. He ran toward the sound, moving as fast as the uneven terrain would allow. In a small clearing, he saw her. A young Apache woman lay on the ground, one leg bent awkwardly, her hand pressed against her calf. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she tried to speak, but the words came out in small, broken gasps. Eli quickly knelt beside her and saw the reason. A large rattlesnake was coiled nearby, its head raised and its tongue flicking the air. The snake's body was thick and powerful, and it hissed loudly. The woman's leg had been bitten, and Eli could see the swelling starting to rise immediately. Without hesitation, Eli grabbed a long stick and gently nudged the snake away, making sure it would not strike again. The snake slithered into the bushes, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Eli then turned to the woman. "You're going to be okay," he said in a calm, steady voice. "I know how to help you." He quickly assessed her wound. He had learned about snake bites from reading old guides and from observing nature. He knew that the key was to slow the venom and prevent infection. Using a small knife, he carefully cut a tiny line above the bite to relieve pressure. Then, he cleaned the wound with water from his flask and applied herbs he carried with him. The woman's breathing gradually slowed as the pain became more manageable, and she looked at him with a mixture of fear and relief. "My name is Lena," she said finally, her voice weak but clear. "Thank you. You saved me." Eli smiled gently. "Just rest. You'll be able to stand soon." He stayed with her, talking softly to keep her calm. Hours passed slowly, but he did not leave her side. As the sun moved across the sky, he gathered more herbs, prepared a small bandage, and ensured she had enough water. He even used his jacket to create a shaded spot to keep her cool, understanding that the shock of the bite could make her feel weak and dizzy. After some time, Lena began to sit up slowly, testing her strength. Eli offered his arm, steadying her as she rose.
"You need to be careful walking," he warned. "The venom is slow, but it's still dangerous."
"I'll help you get back to your village." As they walked down the mountain trail together, she leaned slightly on him, trusting his strength and knowledge. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting golden light across the rocks and trees. Birds sang their evening songs, and the mountains seemed peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. When they finally reached the edge of the Apache camp, Lena's sisters ran out to meet them. They were young women, strong and alert, with sharp eyes that studied Eli carefully. One of them stepped forward, her expression serious. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone cautious but controlled. Eli straightened and gave a polite nod. "I am Eli. I found your sister in the mountains. She was bitten by a rattlesnake. I helped her." Pop ground her eye. The sisters looked at each other, their eyes narrowing. They were grateful, of course, that Lena had survived, but they were not ready to trust this stranger. "You saved her life," one of them said slowly. "But how do we know your intentions are honorable? A man cannot simply claim our trust." Eli understood. He had expected some caution. He knew that in every culture people were protective of their families, especially when it came to strangers. "I only wish to help," he said quietly. "I do not want anything else. Your sister needed help, and I did what I could." The sisters exchanged glances again, still wary, but slightly softened by his calm demeanor and the obvious care he had shown. Lena sat down, leaning on her sisters, and spoke softly. "Save me.
I am alive because of him."
One of the sisters spoke again, more firmly this time. "Then you must prove your worth," she said. "Bravery alone is not enough. A man must show respect, honesty, and courage before he can be trusted." Ellie nodded. He had lived a life in the mountains, often alone, but he understood that earning trust required more than action. It required patience and integrity. He was ready to prove himself if it meant helping Lena and respecting her family. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Eli sat near the fire in the camp. He watched the flames dance and thought about the tasks that might lie ahead. He knew that the sisters would test him in ways he had never experienced before, but he was calm, determined, and ready to face whatever challenges came. Lena looked at him with gratitude in her eyes, while her sisters remained watchful. The mountains around them were quiet, but a sense of expectation hung in the air. Eli understood that this was only the beginning of a journey, not just to help Lena recover, but to prove that his courage, skill, and heart were worthy of the respect of those who had every reason to doubt him. As night fell, the camp settled into a quiet rhythm. Eli felt a strange sense of belonging, even though he had only just met this family. He had saved a life, yes, but now he realized that saving a life was only the first step. True respect, trust, and connection would come only through patience, action, and honor. And in the stillness of the mountains, under a sky full of stars, Eli knew he was ready to take that next step. After the first evening in the Apache camp, Eli woke early, as he always did, listening to the soft sounds of the mountains. The wind moved gently through the trees, and the birds began their morning songs. He looked toward the camp and saw Lena sitting near the fire with her sisters. She smiled at him softly, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and curiosity. The sisters, however, kept their distance. They had made it clear that saving a life was only the beginning. Eli still had to prove his worth. The next morning, the sisters approached him with calm but firm expressions. "If you won our trust," one of them said, "you must show us that you understand our ways, that you respect the land, and that your courage is matched by thought and care." Eli nodded. He understood their caution. A stranger in their world could easily bring harm, even if he meant well. The first test was simple in words, but challenging in practice. He was asked to find a specific herb that grew high in the mountains, one used to help with fatigue and illness. The herb was not easy to find. It grew in small clusters on steep slopes where the soil was thin and loose. Many had tried and failed, slipping on rocks or being forced back by thick brush. Eli accepted the task without hesitation. He gathered his small bag, took his walking stick, and set off up the mountainside. The climb was not easy. Loose rocks slid under his feet, and the branches scratched at his arms. Yet he moved carefully, remembering every step. He scanned the ground, searching for the tiny green leaves with purple tips. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher, warming his back and making his shirt stick to his skin. Still, he pressed on, understanding that this task was not just about finding a plant. It was about showing patience, attention, and respect for the land. Finally, Eli spotted the herb. It was tucked in a small crevice, almost hidden by larger plants. He reached it carefully, making sure not to crush the surrounding roots or disturb the nearby flowers. He picked just enough, leaving the rest untouched, and placed the leaves gently in his bag. Then he began the careful descent, aware that slipping could undo all his efforts. When he returned to the camp, the sisters were waiting. They watched him approach, their expressions unreadable. Eli offered the herb with a simple bow. "I've found it," he said. "I hope it is what you needed." The sisters examined the leaves and nodded quietly. It was correct. One of them spoke, "You have patience, and you move with care. That is good. But patience alone does not prove a man's worth. You must also show courage and honesty." The next challenge came quickly. The sisters asked him to track a deer that had been seen near the mountains. But this was not a simple hunting task. They wanted to see that Eli could respect life, that he could follow nature without harming it recklessly. Eli agreed. He spent the day studying the tracks, observing the signs of the animals, and moving quietly through the underbrush. He found the deer easily enough, grazing in a small clearing, unaware of his presence. Instead of acting hastily, Eli observed it. He noted its size, its markings, and the direction it would likely travel. He did not chase or corner it. When he returned to the camp, he reported what he had learned, explaining carefully where the deer would move next and what dangers it might face. The sisters listened, impressed by his respect for life and his careful observation. Despite his successes, not everything went smoothly. One afternoon, Eli was asked to cross a narrow mountain ridge to collect water from a hidden spring. The path was treacherous, and a single misstep could send him tumbling down the steep rocks. As he moved along the ridge, the wind picked up, howling past him and threatening to throw him off balance. His muscles burned with tension, and his mind focused on every step, every handhold. Suddenly, a small rock gave way under his foot. Eli caught himself just in time, clinging to a sturdy branch. His heart raced, but he stayed calm. He breathed slowly, tested the next step, and moved forward carefully until he reached the spring. He filled his flask and made the careful journey back, holding the water with respect and returning it without spilling a drop. When he arrived, the sisters observed him quietly. They could see the exhaustion in his face, the sweat on his brow, and the steady determination in his eyes. One of them said softly, "You are strong, and you think before you act. That is good. But a man must also show honesty in the small things, not just courage in danger." Eli understood. It was not enough to face risk bravely. He had to live with integrity in every action. Over the next few days, the sisters set smaller tasks to test his honesty. He was asked to identify plants from memory, to gather food without taking too much from nature, and even to carry messages between family members without changing their meaning. Each time, Eli acted with care and respect, showing that he understood the importance of truth and fairness. Lena watched all of this with a mixture of admiration and relief. She knew that her sisters were protective, and she understood why they tested Eli so thoroughly. At the same time, she could see that he was sincere. His calm nature, his respect for the land, and his quiet courage convinced her that he was not just a brave stranger, but a man of honor. One evening, as the camp settled around the fire, the sisters called Ellie over. "You have done well so far," one of them said. "But there is more to come. A man may show patience, courage, and honesty, but he must also understand the values of our people, the balance of nature, and the care for family and community. Only then can trust be complete." Eli nodded. He understood that this was a journey, not a single act. He had saved Lena's life, yes, but that was only the beginning. Earning trust, respect, and acceptance was a process that required dedication, humility, and understanding. He felt ready, knowing that he would continue to prove himself through action, thoughtfulness, and respect. As night fell, he walked to a small rise overlooking the mountains. The stars were bright, scattered across the sky like tiny points of light. He thought about the tasks ahead, about the sisters' tests, and about the lessons he had already learned. The mountains were quiet, yet they seemed full of life, and he felt a deep connection to the land. Eli realized something important. Courage was not just about facing danger. Patience was not just about waiting. Honesty was not just about speaking truth. All these qualities, combined with respect for life and understanding of others, were what truly made a person worthy. And now he had a chance to show that he could live by these principles, not just in the mountains, but in the heart of a community that valued honor above all else. When he returned to the fire, Lena smiled at him. "You have done so much already," she said softly. "I am grateful for your help, and I know my sisters are watching closely." Eli smiled in return, feeling both pride and humility. He knew that he had passed some tests, but many more awaited, and he welcomed them. For the first time, he understood that his life in the mountains, which had often been solitary, could now include connection, trust, and friendship. He had saved a life, and in doing so, he had opened the door to a larger world of learning, responsibility, and respect. And as the fire flickered and the night grew deep, Eli sat quietly, thinking of the tasks ahead, of the sisters' watchful eyes, and of the lessons the mountains had already taught him. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he also knew that he was ready to face it with patience, courage, honesty, and respect. Eli had proven himself in many ways already, yet he knew the tests were far from over. The sisters watched him carefully, noticing not just what he did, but how he moved, how he thought, and how he treated others. One morning they approached him with an expression that was serious but not unkind. "You have shown patience, courage, and honesty," one of them said. "But a man must also show resourcefulness and presence of mind in unexpected danger. Only then can we be sure of his worth." Eli nodded, understanding that this challenge would be different. It would not be a simple task or a planned trial. It would be something that tested not only his skills, but also his instincts and calm under pressure. He did not fear this. He had faced many dangers in the mountains before, but he respected the weight of the test. The sisters explained that a small path led to a secluded spring on the edge of the canyon. It was a beautiful place, hidden among rocks and trees, but the path was narrow, steep, and dangerous. Eli was to fetch water and return safely. "The mountain is not always forgiving," one sister said. "A careless step can lead to disaster. Move carefully and think with every step." The morning sun was warm and the mountain air was fresh. Birds chirped in the trees and the wind rustled the leaves. For the first part of the path, the trail was easy. He moved quickly, scanning the ground for loose stones and unstable footing. But as he climbed higher, the path narrowed. Jagged rocks lined the trail, and a steep drop loomed to his right. One false step could send him tumbling down hundreds of feet. Eli focused completely. He placed his feet carefully, tested each handhold, and moved slowly but steadily. His muscles burned with exertion, and sweat ran down his back, but he did not rush. The mountain demanded respect, and he gave it fully. He reached a small ledge that overlooked the canyon below, and the view was breathtaking. The river far below sparkled in the sunlight, twisting like a silver ribbon through the rocks. But Eli did not pause long to admire it. He had a task to complete. As he approached the spring, the rocks beneath his feet shifted slightly. A small rock tumbled down, and a branch cracked under his weight. His heart skipped a beat, but he remained calm. He adjusted his stance, tested the next foothold, and continued forward. The spring came into view at last, a small pool of clear, cold water nestled between rocks and shaded by trees. He knelt and filled his flask carefully, making sure not to spill a drop. The journey back, however, was far more dangerous. As he retraced his steps, a larger rock suddenly loosened and slid toward him. Eli reacted quickly, grabbing a sturdy tree branch and pulling himself to safety. He paused for a moment, breathing heavily but keeping his mind clear. Danger was part of the mountains, and he knew that panic could make it worse. Carefully, he resumed his descent, placing each foot with precision and using his walking stick for balance. Halfway down, the wind picked up. A sudden gust nearly knocked him off balance. He pressed himself against the rock wall, holding tight to the branch of a small tree. His muscles tensed as he inched forward, step by step, until the wind passed. Each moment demanded complete focus, and Eli remained alert, ready for whatever might come next. Suddenly, a small avalanche of loose stones rolled down toward him. He jumped to the side, letting them pass, and slid safely onto a flat section of the trail. His heart raced, but his mind remained clear. He knew that the key to survival was calm and careful action. Each challenge tested not only his skill, but also his ability to stay composed under pressure. By mid-afternoon, Eli reached the bottom of the path and entered the camp again. The sisters were waiting, their eyes following every movement. They could see the strain in his face, the dirt on his clothes, and the small scratches on his arms from rocks and branches. Yet they also saw the steady determination, the careful thought, and the courage that had carried him safely through the dangers of the mountain.
"You have returned safely," one sister said quietly.
"You moved with both courage and wisdom. Many men would have rushed and fallen. Many would have panicked, but you remained calm. That is what makes a man worthy, not just strength or skill." "It is done," he said simply. "I moved carefully, step by step, and the spring is as it should be." The sisters examined the water and nodded in approval. "You have proven much today," another said, "yet the final tests are not yet complete. Courage, patience, and honesty are only part of a man's worth. He must also show care for others and respect for the bonds of family." That evening, the camp gathered near the fire. Eli helped prepare the evening meal, carrying wood, setting stones for cooking, and ensuring the fire burned safely. He spoke little, focusing on his work, yet his presence was steady and calm. Lena's sisters observed him closely, noting every action. They saw that he did not seek attention, that he acted with thoughtfulness and care, and that he respected the people around him. As night fell, one of the sisters approached him quietly. "You have shown courage and skill," she said, "but there is one more thing. A man may act bravely alone, but he is truly worthy when he can protect others, help them in danger, and think for them as well as himself." She paused, studying his face. Soon there will be a challenge that requires all you have learned. It will test not just your courage, but your mind, your heart, and your respect for life." Eli nodded. He understood that the journey was far from over. The mountains had tested him already, but the real test would come soon, a challenge that could not be met by strength alone. He spent the night thinking, quietly, planning, and preparing himself for what might come. He knew that to earn the sisters' full respect, he would need not only skill and courage, but also wisdom, patience, and compassion. During the night he watched the stars twinkle above the mountains, the wind moved softly through the trees, and the camp slept peacefully. Eli thought about the dangers he had faced that day: the loose rocks, the gusting wind, the avalanche of stones, and how each had required careful thought and calm action. He realized that true bravery was not rushing into danger blindly, but moving with awareness and respect for the world around him. He also thought about Lena. She had survived the snakebite, yes, but she depended on him still, not just for safety, but for guidance and understanding. The sisters' tests were not meant to be cruel. They were meant to show whether Eli could be trusted, whether he could live in their world without causing harm, whether he could act with care, courage, and honesty all at once. As dawn approached, Eli rose quietly, stretching his tired muscles. He was ready to face whatever came next. The mountains had already taught him many lessons: patience, careful observation, respect for life, and calm under pressure. Now he would need to use all of these lessons together. The real turning point was near, and he welcomed it. For Eli, this was more than just a test. It was a chance to grow, to connect, and to become part of a community that valued honor above all else. He had saved a life, but the journey had shown him that saving a life was only the beginning. True respect and trust were earned through patience, courage, honesty, and care for others. And as the first light of morning touched the mountains, Eli felt ready. The challenges ahead would be greater than any he had faced alone. But he was not alone now. He had the eyes of the sisters on him, the trust of Lena beginning to grow, and the wisdom of the mountains guiding him. Whatever came next, he would meet it with courage, calm, and respect for the life around him. The next morning, Eli woke before the sun, the mountains still wrapped in mist and quiet. The previous days had tested him in patience, courage, and skill, but now the sisters had prepared a challenge that would test everything he had learned at once. They had spoken of a final task, one that required not just bravery or careful movement, but sharp thinking, honesty, and respect for the land and the people. Eli knew that this would be the true measure of his worth. The sisters explained the task clearly. "There is a sacred spring several miles from here," one said. "Near it grows a rare herb that our people use only in emergencies. The path is steep and dangerous, with cliffs, narrow trails, and wild animals. You must go alone, find the herb, and return safely. Only then can you show that you are truly worthy of trust." Eli listened carefully, noting every detail. The spring was hidden among high cliffs and dense trees, and the herb was delicate, almost invisible. One wrong step could ruin the journey or put him in danger. Yet he did not hesitate. He had faced challenges before, and he had learned the lessons of patience, observation, and care. This task would be his final proof. He packed a small bag with essentials: water, a few herbs for healing, and his walking stick. As he stepped onto the trail, the sisters watched him closely, their eyes calm but expectant. Lena stood beside them, worry in her expression, but also quiet hope. Eli offered a small nod, a silent promise to return safely. The climb began gently, winding through soft dirt and scattered rocks. Birds sang above him, and the air smelled fresh and earthy. For a time the path seemed easy, almost inviting. Yet Eli knew better. He understood that danger often appeared where it was least expected, and he moved carefully, observing the terrain, testing every foothold, and keeping his balance. As he ascended higher, the trail narrowed, and jagged cliffs rose on either side. A wrong step could send him tumbling down hundreds of feet. He slowed his pace, pressing his walking stick into the soil for support. His eyes scanned every stone and branch, calculating the safest path forward. The sun climbed higher, warming his back and highlighting the steepness of the cliffs. Yet Eli kept moving steadily, focused entirely on the trail ahead. Halfway through his journey, he came to a narrow ridge that seemed almost impossible to cross. The rock was worn smooth, and a drop to the valley below made it terrifyingly dangerous. Eli paused, studying the ridge carefully. He tested each step, moving slowly and deliberately. His muscles strained with tension, but he did not rush. One careful step after another, he made it across safely. Heart steady, mind clear. Beyond the ridge, the path became forested. Trees twisted along the mountainside, their roots creating obstacles that had to be navigated carefully. As Eli moved through, he noticed small signs, broken twigs, animal tracks, and subtle changes in the soil. Every detail mattered. The sacred spring was near, and he needed to find the rare herb without disturbing the surrounding plants or the natural balance. After several hours, he finally reached the spring. The water sparkled clear in the sunlight, shaded by tall trees and surrounded by rocks. The herb grew in small clusters nearby, almost blending into the soil. Eli knelt carefully, inspecting each plant. He selected only what was needed, leaving the rest untouched. He placed the leaves gently in his bag, making sure they were safe for transport. But the journey back would be even more challenging. Eli turned to retrace his steps, and the wind began to blow more strongly. Loose rocks tumbled down the mountainside, and the trail was narrower than before. A sudden gust nearly knocked him off balance. He pressed himself against the cliff, gripping his walking stick tightly, and moved slowly until the wind passed. Suddenly, a small rockslide occurred nearby, sending stones tumbling toward him. Eli reacted quickly, jumping to the side and holding on to a sturdy tree branch. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed calm. Panic would only worsen the situation, and he remembered the lessons the mountains had taught him: patience, observation, and respect for danger. Step by step, he moved carefully, watching every footfall, every loose stone. Half an hour later, he reached the narrow ridge again. It looked just as treacherous as before, but Eli approached it with calm determination. He tested the rocks with his walking stick, finding the most stable spots. One careful step after another, he crossed the ridge successfully. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light across the mountains and highlighting the depth of the valleys below. Finally, he descended the last steep section and saw the Apache camp in the distance. His muscles ached, and his clothes were dirty and torn in places, but he carried himself steadily. He had completed the task. The rare herb was safely in his bag, and he had navigated the dangerous path without harming himself or disturbing the land. When he entered the camp, the sisters watched quietly, noting every movement. They saw the dirt on his hands and clothes, the scratches from branches, and the tired but calm expression on his face. Eli approached, placing the herb on the ground respectfully. "I have returned," he said simply. "The herb is as it should be, and the path has been respected." The sisters examined the herb and nodded in approval. "You have shown patience, courage, and careful thought," one said. You have respected the land, the path, and the plants. You have faced danger and returned safely. That is what makes a man worthy. Lena stepped forward, her eyes shining. You have done more than save my life, she said softly. You have shown honor, strength, and care. I am grateful to you, more than words can say. Eli nodded quietly, understanding the depth of her words. It was not just gratitude he felt, it was a sense of connection, of belonging that he had never known before. The sisters spoke again, their voices calm but firm. Bravery alone is not enough, one said. A man must show respect, wisdom, and care for others. He must think for himself and for those he protects. You have done all this, and more. We can see now that you are truly worthy of trust. Ellie felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of completion. He had faced the final challenge, tested by the mountains, by nature, and by the people he now wished to serve and respect. He had survived danger, acted with wisdom, and treated life with care. In doing so, he had earned not just trust, but acceptance.
Oh.
That evening, the camp gathered around the fire. Eli helped with preparations, carrying wood and arranging stones for cooking. He moved with quiet confidence, aware that every action mattered. Lena's sisters observed him, noting how he worked without complaint, with attention to detail, and with respect for everyone in the camp. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky. The mountains loomed around them, tall and quiet, and the stars above seemed to shine brighter than ever. Eli sat near the fire, thinking about the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned, and the trust he had earned. He realized that saving a life was only the beginning. True honor came from courage, thoughtfulness, honesty, and respect for others. Lena joined him, smiling gently. You have done so much already, she said. But it is not just your strength or skill that matters. It is your heart, your care, and your respect that make you truly worthy.
Eli nodded.
He had learned that lesson well, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The sisters spoke one final time before night fully fell. You have proven yourself, they said, not just with action, but with thought, courage, and respect. That is what makes a man worthy of trust and friendship. Remember this always. Eli listened carefully, understanding that this moment marked a turning point, not just for him, but for the bonds he was forming with Lena and her family. As the night grew deep and quiet, Eli looked up at the stars. The mountains, which had once been a solitary home, now felt like a place of connection and belonging. He had faced danger, learned patience, and earned trust. The journey had tested him in ways he had never imagined, and he had succeeded not just because of skill, but because of heart. And in the stillness of the mountains, with the fire crackling and the stars above, Eli understood something profound. True courage is more than facing danger alone. True honor is shown in every action, in every choice, and in the respect we show to life, to others, and to the world around us. He knew that the final part of his journey was still to come, but for the first time, he felt completely ready. He had faced the ultimate challenge and emerged not only safe but stronger, wiser and more connected than ever before. Eli returned to the camp with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The rare herb, carefully gathered from the sacred spring, rested safely in his bag. Every step he had taken along the treacherous path now seemed like a memory of lessons learned, patience, observation, courage, and careful thought. He had faced danger in many forms, but he had remained calm, steady, and respectful of the land. Now, he knew that the most important test was not only about skill or bravery. It was about trust, integrity, and heart. The sisters watched him closely, their expressions calm but thoughtful. They had seen his journey from the beginning, watched how he handled each challenge, and noted every decision he made. They could see in his eyes that he had learned not just how to survive in the mountains, but how to act with respect, honesty, and care for others. One of the sisters finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "You have returned safely, with wisdom and courage. You have proven yourself not only through action, but through thought, patience, and respect. You are truly worthy of trust."
Lena stepped forward, smiling softly. Her eyes shone with gratitude and relief.
"You have done more than save my life," she said. "You have shown honor, strength, and care. I am grateful to you, more than words can express." Eli felt warmth in his chest at her words. This was more than thanks. It was recognition, understanding, and acceptance. It was a connection he had never felt before, and it moved him deeply. The sisters, after a moment of quiet exchange, invited Eli to join them near the fire. He complied, carrying the herb carefully and setting it before them. "It is yours to use as needed," he said simply, bowing his head slightly. They examined the plant, nodding in approval. "You have respected the land, the path, and the gift. You have acted with caution, bravery, and care. That is what makes a man worthy." Eli listened quietly, understanding that this acknowledgement was more than praise, it was acceptance. He had proven that courage alone was not enough. He had shown wisdom, thoughtfulness, and care for life. Each challenge had taught him something new, and each step had brought him closer to understanding the importance of respect, trust, and connection. Over the next few days, life in the camp settled into a quiet rhythm. Eli assisted with daily chores, fetching water, gathering firewood, and helping prepare meals. He moved with quiet confidence, aware of the sisters' watchful eyes but not burdened by them. Lena often walked alongside him, offering small smiles and words of encouragement. They spoke little, but their bond grew stronger with each passing day. The sisters, though still cautious at times, began to trust him more fully. They saw that his respect for the land, the people, and the rules of their life was genuine, and their initial wariness gradually gave way to quiet admiration. Eli had learned much in his years living alone in the mountains, but living among the Apache had taught him lessons that went beyond survival. He had learned the value of community, the importance of trust, and the power of patience. Each action, each choice, carried weight. The way he treated others, the way he moved through the world, and the respect he showed for life were all equally important as his courage and skill. One evening, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, Eli and Lena sat near the fire, watching the colors of the sky shift from gold to pink to deep blue. "You have changed so much in just a few days," Lena said softly. "Not just in what you have done, but in who you are. You have shown bravery, wisdom, and care. That is rare, even among those who live in these mountains their whole lives." Eli smiled quietly, feeling both humility and pride. He had faced dangers, challenges, and tests, yet he had grown stronger not just in skill, but in understanding. The sisters joined them, and the camp gathered around the fire. A man's worth is measured not by a single act of bravery, but by how he lives each day, one sister said. He must respect life, act with honesty, and care for others. You have shown all of this, and more. We welcome you as a friend and ally, someone who honors the values we hold dear. Eli felt a deep sense of gratitude. This was more than acceptance. It was belonging. In the days that followed, Eli continued to live among the Apache. He learned more about their customs, their stories, and the way they viewed the mountains and rivers as living, breathing parts of their world. He shared his own knowledge of tracking, healing, and surviving in the wilderness, teaching quietly and respectfully, backing my flock. Slowly, the bonds between him and the family grew stronger. He became a trusted presence, not just because he had saved Lena's life, but because he had proven that he could live with integrity, thoughtfulness, and care. Eli reflected on his journey many times. Saving a life had been the first step, but it had only opened the door. Earning trust required more patience, courage, honesty, and respect. He had faced challenges that tested all of these qualities, from dangerous cliffs to treacherous paths, from navigating the wilderness alone to showing care for the family and their land. Each test had taught him something new. Each obstacle had strengthened his understanding of what it meant to be worthy. Lena often walked beside him as they explored the nearby hills, gathering herbs or checking traps. She had recovered fully from the snakebite, and her confidence in Eli had grown with each day. Their conversations were simple but meaningful, filled with laughter, quiet observation, and moments of shared understanding. The sisters, too, treated him with respect, sometimes challenging him gently, but always acknowledging his integrity and skill. One morning, Eli stood on a small rise overlooking the mountains. The valley below was bathed in sunlight, and the air was fresh and clear. He thought about the path he had taken, from saving Lena's life to proving his patience and courage, to facing the final challenge at the sacred spring. Each moment had been a test, each step a lesson. He realized that true bravery was not rushing into danger alone, but acting with thoughtfulness, care, and respect. True honor was earned through consistent action, not a single heroic moment. As he watched the valley, he felt a sense of peace he had never known. The mountains, once a place of solitude, were now a home filled with connection, trust, and friendship. He had saved a life, yes, but he had also become part of something greater, a community that valued integrity, courage, and care above all else. Lena joined him, carrying a small bundle of herbs. "It is beautiful up here," she said softly, "but not as beautiful as what you have brought to our lives. You have shown us all what it means to act with courage and care." Eli smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced dangers, tests, and challenges, yet the greatest reward was the trust and acceptance of the people he had come to respect and admire. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley, Eli realized that his journey had changed him forever. He had learned that true courage was paired with thought and respect, that patience was as important as bravery, and that honesty and care were the foundations of trust. The lessons of the mountains and the tests of the sisters had combined to teach him what it truly meant to be worthy. That night, the camp gathered around the fire one last time. Stories were shared, laughter echoed in the mountains, and the warmth of friendship filled the air. Eli sat quietly, feeling both humility and pride. He had proven himself not just through a single act of heroism, but through a journey of patience, courage, honesty, and care. He had earned trust, acceptance, and a sense of belonging that he had never known before. As the stars appeared above the mountains, bright and steady in the night sky, Eli reflected on his journey. The mountains had tested him, the wilderness had challenged him, and the sisters had judged him. He had faced each challenge with courage, thoughtfulness, and respect, and in doing so, he had proven his worth not only to them, but to himself. Eli knew that life in the mountains would continue to hold challenges, but he no longer faced them alone. He had Lena, her sisters, and a community that trusted him. He had learned that heroism alone was not enough. It was the combination of bravery, wisdom, honesty, and care that defined a man's worth. And as he looked up at the stars, he felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that he had not only saved a life, but had earned a place among people he respected, in a land he loved, living with integrity and heart.